Trustees meeting. This is a virtual and in-person meeting. Some board members and staff should be visible on your video. Board members, please remember to mute your mic when you're not speaking, and do not use the text function. We will have public comments for ordinances and our regular public comment period. Our regular public comment period will be limited to comments of 3 minutes. If you are unable to participate effectively, please reach out to town staff. Robert Bishop, his email address is at the top of is in our board packet, and a phone number to contact if you are having technical difficulty. We appreciate your patience with this format, and it is our hope that we can create a friendly and respectful atmosphere for public dialogue. This time I call to order the regular meeting of the Monument Board of Trustees, September 21st, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Hogan, would you take roll, please?
Mayor Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott? Here. Trustee Clark? Noted absent. Trustee LeKind?
Here.
Trustee Romanello?
Here.
Trustee Stevens?
Here.
Trustee Unruh?
Here.
Okay, before us we have a consent agenda. Are there any modifications to the consent agenda? I do have one consent agenda question. Mr. Foreman, on one of our bills this period was Murphy and Dahl and Associates.
Murray and Dahl.
Murray and Dahl. It showed I want to say an almost $5,000 cost for the annexation of the fire department, which did not go through because they didn't know who owned the fire department. Is that our liability to pay that?
They're paying that cost. They charge us and we're going to charge them.
Okay. That was my only question. If there was no other questions or modifications, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Unruh?
Yes.
Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee LeKind?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Trustee Romanello?
Yes.
Okay, moving forward with the agenda. Item 5, proclamation of Arts Month. Is Mr. Vic with us today?
Should be on virtually.
What about... Okay, at this point, I will skip that momentarily and move to item 6, presentation.
Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry. I would reach out to Allie. Okay, she's with the Creek Week, or the proclamation, excuse me.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Oh. Okay, again, we will move to item number 6, presentation, 7th annual Creek Week cleanup. Mr. Banks, would you like to make some comments? Drew, is he set up to make comments? Okay, Mr. Banks, if you are ready to speak, please unmute yourself. Mr. Banks, go ahead. Mr. Banks, can you hear us? We cannot hear you. Mr. Anderson, can you reach out to Mr. Banks? Did he have a presentation?
His camera's on. He's obviously in the room. He just got his audio to get worked out.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with the video.
And he could call in if he wants to.
Can we go back to our regular screen? Ms. Vandenhoek, are you online, please?
Mayor, I can't hear you.
I guess I have to unmute myself. Ms. Vandenhoek?
Yes.
We are having some audio difficulties with the video and with Mr. Banks. Can you give us a brief overview of Creek Week?
Sure. The Fountain Creek Week event is a community cleanup to help protect the waterways. This is generally an event that's done the last 2 weeks of September and into October. So this year would be September 25th through October 4th. People can register to their groups to pick a site to clean up at the Fountain Creek Week website. Historically, the town has hosted an event, but due to trying to keep crowds smaller, we will not be hosting an event, but we encourage residents to take a small group and clean up around town and just keep our creeks and waterways clean.
Thank you very much, and my apologies to put you on the spot there, but we were having some technical difficulty. With that being said, yes, we will move on, or we will move back to, do we have Andy Vick on at this time? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, ordinance, or do we want to just go ahead and do the proclamation? We will go ahead and do the Art Month proclamation. I assume board members have had the opportunity to read the proclamation. And if we are in all in agreements, I will have Trustee Stevens read the proclamation. Go ahead, Trustee Stevens.
October is Arts Month in the Pikes Peak region. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and whereas the arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of every American, including those of us in the Pikes Peak region, and whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, and whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our national economy by generating $166.3 billion in total economic activity annually, $153.3 million of annual economic impact in the Pikes Peak region, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 4.6 million jobs across the nations, over 5,000 jobs locally. Now, therefore, the Town of Monument Board of Trustees hereby proclaim October as Arts Month in Colorado's Pikes Peak region, and call upon residents to promote the arts and culture in Monument, and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in their community. Proclaimed this 21st day of September 2020.
Thank you, Trustee Stevens. Number 7, ordinance number 22-2020, an ordinance approving the annexation property known as J. Nelson. Mr. Manning.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. Had a fairly simple one in our mind anyway tonight, and I'd like to start with the description of where this location is. Are you changing it or me? Okay, next one. Okay, this is a location map of this small annexation. It's just northwest of 2nd and Front Street, and it's attached to an existing housing house that's in the city limits. It's small, and it's procured by this owner through a court action by previously having occupied this land for some time and coming to an agreement that they just will now own it. And the owner is desirous of selling this to a commercial, hopefully commercial user, and the additional land will not only help with making the lot larger, as it is relatively small now, but will also provide access to 2nd Street through an easement. So this particular piece of land is a part of an enclave. The brown area is the enclave itself, about 3+ acres. That means it's totally surrounded by the town. As such, it can be annexed by the town by a single ordinance. Of course, we have done the noticing in the newspapers and everything else required to get to this point. So we have been working with this owner and feel that they want to have this annexed. We think it's a good idea. We think it's good that it be zoned B business, as that's what's around there. And that's what we're promoting in this downtown area. So again, it's currently a residence. Next. Here's a little bit of a blow up, giving you an idea of its access with the north-south easement from that brown area to 2nd Street and the additional land area for that relatively small parcel. Let's see, comprehensive plan shows this as BC Business Campus. The Planning Commission heard this and is recommending approval. And we'd like to see you do so tonight as well.
There's no presentation from the applicant?
We are the applicant.
Oh. There's not a representative from the property. Okay. With no other presentation, do we have questions from the board?
So how does this work? The property owner is surrendering their property? Is that what
No,
happens
they're just-
during the annex, or what?
We're annexing it out of an enclave that's in the county, and it will be in the town.
And she needs this to be able to sell the property. The new buyer wants to be in the town of Monument.
Okay. Seeing this is a public hearing item, I will open the floor to public comment. Do we have any comments for or against this property or against this ordinance? Mr. Manning, is there anybody standing in the hall?
No.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, do we have anybody online that would like to comment on this item? Okay. I will close the public hearing portion of this item and bring it back to the board for further questions or motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 22-2020, an ordinance approving the annexation of property known as J. Nelson annexation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll, please?
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
trustee LeKind,
Yes.
trustee Unruh,
Yes.
trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. Motion approved 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Item, excuse me, item 7B, ordinance number 2320, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Monument, authorizing and approving the execution and delivery by the town, a site lease agreement and lease purchase agreement. Mr. Ritchie.
I wanted to quickly turn on my mic and then expound on some of the points in the memorandum in your board packet. Town staff have consulted with bond counsel and outside legal counsel to determine the best option for financing water system improvements. Tonight, we have Mr. Nate Eckloff in the room with Piper Jaffrey and Ms. Kim Crawford online with Butler Snow to field any questions you may have. Both council have recommended the sale of certificates of participation to finance water system improvements, as COPs give the town the maximum budgetary flexibility. In our case, Monument has both two-way water fund and water enterprise funds from which it can fund water system improvements. Normal revenue bonds would have the town bond just one source of revenue or just one fund. COPs are different and they allow Monument to allocate each year the amount from each fund or any legally authorized funds to cover the repayment. This gives maximum budgetary flexibility to the town while complying with all applicable fiscal requirements and regulations. The collateral for the agreement will be town real property, infrastructure, and improvement. All financial agreements the staff have evaluated required some collateral of some type. COPs have the added protections for the town of being payable from multiple sources and secured by a lease and not a transfer of title. So if you were going to get a loan from a bank, you'd put up the property and they would be able to transfer title if you did not pay. In this particular case, it is a lease for a particular period of time. Monument will not at any time lose title to any of its assets. Town staff are working to secure substitution provisions to allow the removal and or substitution of assets as the base rents are paid and infrastructure for which the COPs are being used are built out. COPs are a financial structure that has been approved by the Colorado Supreme Court and has been utilized by the state as well as many counties, municipalities, and school districts in the state as a method to fund projects without raising taxes. The ordinance before you will approve the town entering into the COP agreements and will approve the attached agreements as to form. In our case, the final fiscal terms will be determined when the COPs go to market. So we plan on, of course, raising $22 million. Town does raise $22 million, but other terms like the interest rate and the repayment amount will be based upon market conditions when the COPs go to market. The marketing of the COPs is subject to your approval tonight of some maximum value for terms. Staff and council, of course, expect to secure more advantageous terms, but provided a suggested set of maximum values to which the marketed COPs cannot exceed. Those limitations are a total amount of $22 million raised, a sublease term not to exceed 30 years. The maximum annual repayment will not exceed $1.5 million. Currently, market rates would have our payment around $1.2 million. The maximum net effective rate will not exceed 4.5%. Current market rates are around 3% or less. So we built in a substantial cushion to allow the sale to go forward. Of course, the payments will be based off the $22 million marketed, the sublease terms, and the interest rates. With the exception of the amount raised, Monument is seeking shorter and lower terms for the COPs. Town staff recommends approval of ordinance 23/2020, and staff stand by for any questions you may have.
Okay. Do we have anybody else that is speaking from the bond council or any other presentations?
They're available for questions, but I do not believe they have any presentations.
Okay. Before we get to questions, at this point, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Mr. Tharnish, do you see anybody in the hall?
I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, do we have anybody online? Okay. I will leave the public hearing portion open momentarily, but move back to, it's on. Okay. I will leave the public hearing item or public hearing portion of this open for a minute, but we'll return to the board for questions or comments, concerns. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, it's just my understand, just some clarification here. When you lease to someone, there's someone you're leasing to. So I'm assuming what organization is this that we're leasing the property to?
So the trustee in this particular, what we will be doing is we will be leasing our property to a financial trustee.
Okay.
BOK FNA. They're a banking institution up in Denver. We'll be leasing the property to them, and they will be leasing it back to us in exchange for rents, which will pay for the amount of the lease. So we lease to them. They give us hopefully $22 million marketed through the certificates of participation. What happens then is they lease it back to us, and we pay them what are known as base rents to pay that $22 million off.
Okay.
So it's a lease back agreement.
Okay, thank you.
You said removal of subleased property. So am I understanding this correctly in that as we make payments to a certain point, a certain property becomes no longer part of the lease agreement?
We are working to include those provisions in the COPs. So either we'd be able to, the goal here is to either be able to remove items as the base rents are paid, or be able to substitute them for other properties. So for instance, we had one property, we could swap it for another of equal value or lesser value, depending on the terms as we negotiate them.
And part of this, doing this now, is because of the interest rate factor.
Definitely, that's it.
And we're guaranteed by our resolution here that interest rate would not exceed, what was it,
4.5.
4.5, but we're assuming we're getting much better than that.
Yeah, I think Mr. Eckloff could back me up on this. Today's rates are under 3. They're somewhere in the 2.9s. And so we're kind of pushing this to get this done before the election. And so we feel like that if we can get this done before the election, that the rates will continue to stay low. We're not sure what can happen after the election, so we'd like to get all this completed. We needed to move this up a couple of weeks just because of the notification period that you have to do and the publication period that you have to have in the newspaper.
Okay. Trustee LeKine, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
You guys kind of froze. I can't hear anything after Mitch said I do not.
We haven't said anything yet. We're working on some technical items. But since we have Trustee Romanello ready, do you have any questions or comments on this topic?
No, sir.
Trustee Unruh?
Yeah, nothing here either.
Okay. If we are not showing any other public comments, Mr. Anderson, I will go ahead and close the public comment portion and bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 23, 2020, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees in the Town of Monument, Colorado, authorizing the approval and the execution and delivery by the town of a site lease agreement and a lease purchase agreement and related documents concerning the leasing by the town of certain properties owned by the town to the finance certain public improvement, including water improvement, setting forth certain parameters, restrictions, ratifying actions previously taken, and providing other matters related thereto.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Second was Trustee LeKine. Ms. Hogan, will you take roll?
Trustee Unruh,
Yes.
That did not come through, Trustee Unruh.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee LeKine.
Yes.
Trustee LeKine, that one did not come through.
Yeah.
Thank you. That motion passes 6-0.
Mayor, if I could. Just want to thank the board and mayor for support of this. As you know, we've told you in a couple of updates that this will help us do about $22 million worth of vastly needed projects over the next 3 years. And we have to get these projects completed within 3 years. But not only that, it leaves about $5 million in our 2A fund for any important things that we have to do besides this 22 million. And I think you know what I'm talking about. If we have some projects that we need to be able to do, we can fund those. And so just want to thank you for your support on this project.
Well, thank you guys for putting this together, and I do believe that this is a very effective way to get projects done within the town without going to the taxpayers and asking for more. So thank you guys for putting this together.
You bet.
At this point, we'll move on to Resolution 8A, Resolution number 39, 2020, a resolution awarding a contract to Velocity for Well 7. Mr. Tharnish.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. The resolution you have in front of you is to award a contract to Velocity Constructors for the well number 7 water treatment plant upgrades. I came to you, I believe, the previous meeting to approve some SCADA control work that involved the same treatment plant. This contract here is for basically the mechanical and the electrical portion of that project. And we found out over time that by splitting this contract up with the previous SCADA persons, we were able to save some money. And when it went out to bid, the bids came in less than the engineer's estimate, which again was a good thing, enabling us to save even more of the taxpayers' money. The contract in front of you is to complete the valve changeout and to upgrade the backwash control panel portion of this. And I'm very willing to answer any questions you may have concerning this project.
Was this a capital improvements project?
It's a capital improvement under the Water Enterprise Fund,
And so it comes out of the Water Enterprise Fund,
because of Water Enterprise Fund.
but it was one that was budgeted for, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Questions from the board? Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 39, 2020, a resolution awarding a contract to Velocity Constructors, Inc. for well number 7 water treatment plant modifications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Trustee Romanello,
Yes.
trustee Unruh,
Yes.
trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
trustee LaKind.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0. Resolution number 40-2020, a resolution authorizing the town manager to file the 2019 audit with the state auditor, Ms. Holmes.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. We're supposed to be having Jim Hinkle from Hinkle and Company join us on this call. He has not, I don't believe, is on yet at this point. He was attending remotely as he was, I believe, making another similar presentation at another municipality this evening as well, and so was attending multiple meetings. So I will just go ahead and get started. If he does sign on in the next couple of minutes, I'll give him a couple minutes to speak to you. He can have a couple of minutes to speak to you as well.
Would you rather wait a few minutes and we'll move on to other items?
That would be fine.
Yeah, definitely. I think we had scheduled him for about 7:20 or 7:30.
Yeah.
So
So I did send him a message saying that we had moved faster than we were anticipating and
Okay.
went further. But if we want to move on to other items and come back, that would be great.
I think it'd just be easier for you instead of
Thank you.
starting it and then stopping it until he gets on.
Okay.
We will move resolution 8B down to item 12.5. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Sergeant Owens, do we have anybody in the hall? Thank you. Mr. Anderson, do we have anybody online? Okay, thank you. Board authorization items. 2021 budget workshop, 5:30 p.m., October 5th. That would be our first meeting in October, correct? Or our first regular meeting in October.
yes, sir.
Do any board members have any questions or concerns with that? Okay, so that is scheduled for October 5th. Other board authorization items. Mr. Foreman, would you mind scheduling our new leadership program intern for an introduction at the October 5th meeting also?
Definitely, I'll do that. I have one additional item I'd like to add.
Okay.
We finally have the agreement with CDOT, I think, wrapped up. And so I've instructed Ms. Hogan to put that on next October 5th agenda. And that's for the Jackson Creek Parkway grant that we're getting from PPACG.
That's the engineering grant?
Yes, for the design.
Or design, yes.
Yes.
That would be on October 5th also?
October 5th, right.
How are we sitting for October 5th at this point?
I think we're okay, aren't we, Laura? We're going to meet tomorrow to go over it, but I don't think there's a whole lot on there. I don't have Debbie or Larry in here. Yep.
I believe Debbie has one ordinance.
Right.
And then that was already on there as a resolution.
Right.
Yeah, the planning has the Papa Commons Center preliminary plan.
Mr. Mann,
Yes. Can you hear me?
go ahead.
Yeah, we have the Falcon Commerce Center preliminary plan coming forward at that time. It's going to the Planning Commission this week. And that's the only one.
And then obviously.
Yeah, what you heard in the workshop today on the Jackson Creek commercial, that'll be brought to you on October 5th.
Okay. But that's just for the special district,
right?
Not for
zoning or anything like that. Just for
not
special.
zoning or
Sketch plan.
yes, sketch plan.
Right.
Okay. Does that work for the board members? Okay. We'll move on to town manager report. Mr. Foreman, do you have anything to add to the town manager report? Is there any questions from the board in regards to the town manager report? Okay. With none, is that your guest? Before we go to Board of Trustee comments, we'll move back to resolution number 40, 2020, a resolution authorizing the town to file the 2019 audit. Ms. Ohms, go ahead.
Mayor and trustees, I would like to introduce Jim Hinkle from Hinkle and Company to the board. He had another meeting this evening as well, so he's joining us remotely. He's going to give a brief overview of the audit and the results, and then we can then answer any follow-up questions that the board members might have. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come and present in front of the council the results of the audit of the 2019 financial statement. We began our audit with a process where we gain the understanding of the internal control structure over the accounting department, how transactions are processed and recorded in the town's general ledger, as well as segregation of duties, making sure that more than one person is involved in the process of creating, approving, and recording any transaction. Once we gain that understanding, we then do what we call test of controls, where we identify the control features of those internal controls, and we select a sample of disbursements and of payroll transactions, and we then determine whether or not those control features are operating as intended and that they are effective in their operations. The results of that internal test of controls is two things. The first is that we determine whether or not the town has any material weaknesses or internal controls, significant deficiencies in internal controls. Now, those are terms of art for us. A significant deficiency is a weakness in the internal control structure that allows an error to go undetected in the ordinary course of business. And material weakness is defined as a significant deficiency that would result in a material misstatement to the annual financial statements. And the results of our analysis and our testing resulted in us not identifying any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So that is what you want to hear, that there are no significant deficiencies in internal controls or in significant deficiencies. The second thing that allows us to do is to assess our risks with respect to the annual financial statements and to design our tests of those financial statements based upon the results of our work. So most of the year-end financial statement audit work is what we call substantive testing, where we do tested details and analytic review. Tested details is where we drill down into an account balance and we look at supporting documentation for various specific accounting transactions. We look at invoices that support the expenditures. We look at cash receipts that support the revenues. We look at outside documents that were prepared by outside parties, like tax statements from the county and the state, and compare those to the county records. We also look at internal analytic reviews, where we compare this year to budget, this year to last year's results. We compare balance sheet items to income statement items. And what we're looking for is relationships that we don't anticipate or that we can't easily explain. And when we find those, we do more tested details where we drill down into those specific account balances to determine whether or not there is supporting documentation for those specific transactions. The results of all that work is that we have an audit opinion on the financial statements, and that opinion that we have issued this year is an unmodified opinion. And in layman's term, that means it is a clean opinion. Basically states that the financial statements are presented in accordance with accepted accounting principles and are consistent with the prior year's financial statements. That's also what you want to hear. Along with our audit report, we issue a letter called Those Charged with Governments, or Required Communication Letter. It used to be called an Audit Committee Letter. Basically, we're required to communicate in writing whether or not certain events have occurred during the course of our audit. And we have nothing that occurred, and that's what we're reporting. We did not have any disagreements with management. We did not have any difficulties in the audit process. We did not make any material adjustments to the financial statements from the books and records of the town. And we were not aware of the town communicating with other auditors during the process of our audit. That goes back from the days 15, 20 years ago, where we had what we call opinion shopping, where if we had an issue with the town in their accounting and the town didn't like us having that issue, they'd go find an accounting firm that agreed with them. And if we find out that that's happening, we have to communicate that to the council as well. And that did not occur as well. So there are no required communications issues that we have to communicate. All in all, it was a very clean audit. It was a little bit cumbersome this year with the pandemic hitting and the fact that we went remotely. And on a first year audit, that adds to a little bit of complexity, but we got through it well. Rosa and her staff were very cooperative in our requests, and we were able to get through it. The last thing that I'd really like to emphasize is that as we went through this audit process, we as the auditors felt like we had open transparency. Everything that we asked for, we were provided. We didn't feel like anything was kept from us. And there was an open dialogue and communication through the process. So we want to let the council know that we felt like we had open transparency with management and that everything that we needed and asked for, we were provided on a timely basis. Any questions on the process of the audit itself?
Thank you, Mr. Hinkle. Is any questions from the board? Okay, I have a question for Mr. Foreman. How did you feel about this audit compared to our last audit?
You know, the last audit, I think everybody remembers there was a lot of issues that were brought up to us, and we were able to repair most of those issues. This one, you know, it's long and it's tedious because it's a brand new auditor. You know, we felt like we needed to change auditors. I think we'd use the same person, not the same company, but the same person was involved in our audits for nearly 7 years. And that's a long time to be using the same person to do your audit. And so we felt like this company was really good to be able to come in, have fresh new eyes, take a look at this. And the results of the audit are just like he said. You know, I think it's a tremendous statement for Ms. Ooms and her staff, how well they did this year. And so I think it's a really good audit compared to ones I've had in the past in other towns. It's better than what I've seen. There wasn't a whole lot of issues that were brought up. And so I think there were, one or two maybe, and that was really it. And we got those taken care of really quickly.
You're talking about the adjusting entries?
Right, adjusting entries.
So there are 2 small adjusting entries that you would have seen in the letter that came out along with in your packet. And they were entries to make some of the long debt recorded as current, because you're supposed to record a piece of that as current. And then also just the change to the Tabor reserve based on what our final end of year expenses ended up being. So we'll work next year to hopefully not have either of those either.
Yeah, but those are normal. I mean, those are just changes that happen during the year. And so not anything abnormal at all. And so I'm very proud of our staff.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may add a slight comment on those adjustments, if I may, is that all right?
Please do.
Those adjustments are really reclassifications within the financial statements. The long-term debt current portion is just adjusting where they show up in the financial statements. The same thing with the Tabor reserve. It's still fund balance. It's just a matter of what line item the reserve is versus unrestricted fund balance. What I'd like to emphasize is we didn't find an error in the accounting that had to be corrected through a journal entry to the books and records. And I think that's the difference.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes, so this was your first with us and you were kind of thrown into it. Thank you for all your work on this. How does it compare to what you've done before?
So in my previous position as a finance director, we were a much larger city that had more staff. So I had a point audit person. So she was the one who did all the day-to-day dealing with the auditors and getting them all of their information. So this was actually my first time doing any of that.
Being directly involved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was in communication with the auditors in the past and obviously was the, reviewing all the financial statements and everything at the end, but I was not directly involved in any of the daily stuff.
Are you happy with the audit?
Yes. I think it went well. They were, Jim and his staff were very easy to work with. They were very responsive in getting stuff back. And I thought to reiterate what he said, there was definitely open communication and dialogue. I felt like it went very smoothly. Hopefully next year will take less time. That's pretty much the improvement that we can make, but starting with the new audit with the new firm and new staff working on it, those things were pretty inevitable. So
excellent.
I think I told her the other day, I think this is something she should apply to GFOA for an award for, because they do give out awards for these, and I think she should apply for that.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, I will look for a motion on this resolution authorizing the town manager to file the audit.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 40-2020, a resolution authorizing the town manager to file the 2019 audit with the state auditor.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Hogan?
Mayor Pro Tem Elliott,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Romanello,
I'm sorry, he just texted me he had to leave.
Trustee LeKind,
Yes.
Trustee Unruh.
Yes.
That motion passes 5 with 1 absent. That takes us to Board of Trustee comments. Do we have any Board of Trustee comments?
Excuse me, Mayor, it looks like we've got an attendee with her hand up that would like to say something from the public.
Okay, no problem. Public comments. We have one comment. Mr. Anderson, will you let me know when she is ready to comment? It's on. Okay. Ms. Swearinger, you are on mute. Whenever you would like to come off mute, please feel free to make your comment.
There we go. Found it.
There we go.
Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I mainly just wanted to say that I don't know if everybody going around on the west side of town took a look during this summer, but I know that there were shortages of funds and also shortages of personnel, but I wanted everyone to please acknowledge how well Cassie, the town gardener, did around town this summer. Everything looks really great. She put in obviously a lot of hard work. And I don't know if anybody has gone by and seen the demonstration garden that's over there at the trailhead on 3rd Street. But again, that's coming along really nice too. And we've enjoyed going through that all summer long and seeing what's been coming up. So I just wanted to give a big old pat on the back to Kathy, and hope everybody in the town realizes just all the hard work that obviously she has done. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Foreman, will you pass that on to Cassie?
I definitely will. And just to remind the board that this summer, Cassie did not have student help out there, that the summer help that she normally has. And so she had to take on a lot more this summer than she normally does.
She was not even a full 2-man team, correct?
Exactly.
Because I believe the person helping her had other responsibilities
Definitely.
also.
Yeah, they were splitting other jobs because remember we had to have some furloughs during the summer also.
Okay. And the demo garden that she mentioned is a low water demo garden, correct?
It is, definitely.
Okay. Yep. So I would agree. I would encourage people to stop by and see that while there's still some of the season left.
Definitely.
Mr. Anderson, were there any other public comments? Okay. Board of Trustee comments. Trustee LeKind.
I don't have any, thanks.
Okay. Trustee Unruh.
Yeah, I have nothing here either.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no other.
Wait. Oh. Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. In the past, when we voted on this, the audit, there's been a lot of contention in the past history, and not to dig anything up from the past, but what I'd like to make a comment or find out, and maybe Mr. Ritchie can enlighten us, or enlighten me at least, is this vote that we took, I mean, I understand that we are required by law to have an audit. And I understand that it's important for us to see the presentation of that audit. But is the vote to approve, to move it on to the state, is that required by ordinance or by statute? Should we even, I mean, if we don't like the audit, then we should have a motion to fire the auditor or something like that. But if we, but I remember this actually happened a year or two ago, I forget. But the whole idea is that we almost had a town shutdown. A government shutdown for the town of Monument because the vote failed, and there wasn't any anyway. I don't know what the reasoning was, but the point is it created quite a panic and quite a concern among the staff because we were about to say, okay, well, what that means is if we don't send it to the state, it means that they are not allowed, they're going to withhold our state revenue, our sales tax revenue. So we're going to shut down here until we get this passed. So my question is, by law, is it statutorily required to pass the ordinance, or do we have the ability just to move it on? And could we in the future dispense with approving the auditor? Because I mean, what are we going to do? Say, oh, we don't like this auditor, so let's do it again. And I think the gentleman pointed out a very good point, is that maybe 15 years ago there was form shopping where they didn't like the result of one auditor, so they looked for another auditor. So I understand maybe why that's here, but maybe you could enlighten us on the regulations there.
You know, I don't know that regulation off the top of my head, but I am happy to look into it. As far as what we need to do, if we don't need to bring issues to you and we think we've got a good handle on the finances, I'm happy to bring that forward. But I do think we are required to send it forward to the state auditor. And
if I recall, it required a resolution by the board just expressing that it had been presented to us. So I think what we found out was it didn't really matter if it passed or failed, but that it was presented to the board and the resolution was proof that they shared it with the elected officials.
Right. You have to give direction to the town manager to file it with the state.
So the resolution wasn't actually to technically approve the audit. It's just authorizing the town manager to be able to submit it to the state.
Right.
And the state requires that the board receives the audit and that they have a chance to review it and make comments or whatever is necessary before it is submitted to the state. So having the resolution is basically just the paper documentation that we can send to the state saying, this has been presented to the board has seen it, the board has reviewed it, and they are giving us the go-ahead to file it.
Okay.
So in essence, we were approving Mike handing it to them.
If in the future a new board comes in and for whatever reason they decide to vote no on it, so what happens at that point? We don't submit it, and then then the state withholds our taxes, is essentially
correct. And I think that's why we moved to a resolution that was supposed to be more defined, and you just clarified that.
Right.
That we are approving him to send it to the state. We are not approving our feelings on the audit.
Yeah, that's what I was told, because this happened before I got here, was that some board members felt uncomfortable approving the audit. And so by approving the audit, they might vote no on that, but they were okay with the town manager just filing the audit. So you weren't actually in the resolution approving the audit and saying that you agreed with the audit. You're just giving direction to the town manager to file that audit with the state.
Thank you for the clarification.
And then if there was issues with it, the state would take action on down, correct?
That is my understanding.
That's my
yes.
understanding.
So they will,
yes.
I'm assuming, review it. And if there are issues, that's why it's actually, so we had requested the extension due to starting getting a late start on the audit. But typically it's required to be to the state within 7 months after the completion of the fiscal year, which then would give them time, I'm assuming, to review things prior to a new fiscal year starting. a few months down the road in case there were any issues or things that we needed to try to fix with them.
Good.
Very good.
I had one other question that I missed. Also, Mr. Thornish, you said that the contract with Velocity came in under budget, correct? Was that significant or?
The project came in quite a bit under the engineer's estimate, but when we sent it out to bid, it originally bid out with the SCADA work included with it. And what we decided to do at that time was pull the SCADA work out. And so between the SCADA work that was approved the last period and the project now combined, it still came in under what the engineer's probable cost of construction was, which is usually is an indicator when we have a project come in and the engineer says, we think this is going to cost 150,000 and it comes in at 180. Usually the project doesn't move forward because either we missed something or the people bidding it didn't understand the instructions in the RFP. So we tend to have, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes the actual RFPs come in quite a bit under, and a lot of times it depends on the time of year and how hungry people are for work. Velocity tend to be one of those companies that feels a need in kind of the middle range. They're not really a company that win, at least my opinion, they don't win a lot of multi-million-dollar contracts, but they feel that need for these projects that fall in between, 75 and maybe $250,000, because they've done previous projects for us. One was rather large, but the others have all been in that what I call the medium range.
Okay.
So.
Excellent. And I think there's been a great demonstration tonight of staff prudence and fiscal responsibility, and we appreciate it from all you guys.
Definitely. We got a great staff and all the way around the board.
If there are no other comments from the board, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.